It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
If there was a crew here, it would be like, intro, take 43. Not quite that bad. This is our third time lucky. Welcome to the fourth episode of Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast we established, not broadcast, a few weeks ago. A podcasted, in fact, or podcast from a kitchen bench in Auckland, New Zealand. Myself, the host, Lewis, chatting to people I consider creators and innovators vaguely, but also on a most pragmatic level, people I hope I know I can get an hour and 20 of dialogue out of, if not to amuse and please myself, but to amuse and please the rest of you, and hopefully offer you some insight into people you do know about, and insight and interest into people you may not have known about, but then you wish to know more about. My guest this week, a man I met only briefly in the late 90s, but whenever I've bumped into him since, he's felt like an old, I was going to say an old sock. He's felt like an old sock, an old crusty sock. He's felt like an old friend, and I'm not sure that's a tribute to the fact that hopefully we're compatible and enjoy each other's company, or whether it's a tribute to the fact, or a testament rather to the fact, he probably makes a lot of people feel like that, to his personality. I suspect a bit of both. Mr. Nathan Rarere, currently host of Radio Sport in the mornings, recently did a show I thought was fantastic on Māori television called Brown Eye, which is a great name for a show that focuses on current events from a Māori perspective. Where did I meet him in the late 90s? Well, they had a show a number of you may remember called Ice TV, where three young'uns at the time had to fill 3 hours of television on Saturday afternoon, which may or may not, I don't really know the stats or what the state of it was, but I assume would have been a bit of a wasteland of a television slot. And it quickly took off, so it was quite exciting when they decided to come and do a story on little old me at my little student radio station in Wellington. And so I was on Ice TV, it broadcast on my 21st birthday, but I remember that day thinking that we all just got along and had a friggin' great laugh. So yeah, that was it. I think I saw him again 10 years later. So anyway, he came on, we chatted about stuff, we didn't really dwell on stuff. I guess imagine he gets asked about things like that show a lot all these years later. We actually spent a lot of the podcast talking about Polynesian migration, owing to a show that he did with Oscar Kitely, but I'll stop there and let you learn more about it as it goes. It was interesting. One thing I do need to clarify is, in the heat of the conversation, boom, Nathan mentioned that Māori got the vote in 1976, to which I was surprised and interested, and took at face value and didn't question. He, of course, didn't mean to say that as a fact. It was because we were lost in the banter, and what he actually meant was the fact that in 1976 Māori got the right to vote in the on the general seats, or for the general seats, rather than there being just a sole distinct Māori vote for the Māori seats. So, in other words, there was kind of a voting apartheid, I guess, in a way, a segregation up until that date. So that's what he meant there. I have on my list, because I don't want to go on too long this week, the second point is Sausage Fest. It's a little event I'm putting on. No, it's the fact that I've been acutely aware since the beginning that we're in danger of veering into this podcast seeming like a bunch of men in their 40s reminiscing about the 90s. My guest, very shortly, will be, I don't normally give clues, about a woman in her early 20s. If you're an Aucklander, or more broadly a New Zealander, she's had a particular amount of press in the last 6 months and so on. So there we go. Sausage Fest, no more Also, speaking of guests, if you want to jump on the website, contact me. There's contact details there. I'm really open to suggestions for guests, even if you think yourself might be a great guest, because I'm certainly not have a precious list. I have a list of people I'd like to be on, but I'm more than open to suggestions. Older, younger, women, men, taller, shorter, etc., etc., etc. I just would like a broad palette. Okay, I think that's about it. You can share and you can like if you would, or please share and like, please, because I think that's how this thing is going to gain traction outside of friends. And I've had a few new followers in the last week, which is great. Thank you to the new listeners, people popping up on the Facebook page who I don't know personally, which I think is a great sign. It's early days yet, but I'm at Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook, Just Verbal Highs on Twitter. I shouldn't say Just Verbal Highs. It's actually at Verbal Highs, little @ Verbal Highs. Verbalhighs.com is where you get the shows. You probably already know about that and seen that there. But could you please also rate the show, subscribe to the show on iTunes, and rate it, even if it's just the star number system. So even if you're downloading the apps through the site, through my site, it would be a real help to me if you go to iTunes and share, tweet, rate. That's right. Sorry, it was a long weekend, folks. A fun, long weekend. But I'm feeling it today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nathan Rarere. Actually, if I could just jump on again a second. There's no awkward satchel of segues this week. Apologies for fans of the only feature on the show. I forgot during the episode. There's also no musical interludes. Though I did find this sample of Trump today.
Watch him. He's a comer.
But I didn't quite know where to put it in for this episode. I'll just play that again.
Watch him. He's a comer.
Didn't know where to put that. Nathan.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
And the hot wings went past, and I was like, "That's the smell. This is it." And yeah, so it gets me.
So I guess we'll go from here. So welcome to I think what will probably be episode 4 of Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. We have someone in this morning who has already probably done 3 hours of speaking behind a mic this morning. Probably been up since about 2 hours after I went to bed. Such is the want of the breakfast producer. He was a schoolboy presenter on 93 FM in the Hawke's Bay, a presenter on 90s youth show. This is going to give it away to a lot of people. Ice TV and Channel Z as well, which was a radio station at the time. Some of you will be aware. Has been a sports-based presenter on various radio and television shows, including Sportsa, which I think was with Oscar Kitely, a bunch of quiz shows, a stint on a panel show on Māori TV called Brown Eye. Did a documentary with Oscar as well about Where Do I Come From, like that kids book I remember, except not about puberty, about what would you call it, racial lineage? DNA,
yeah.
He speaks. He was married to Kelly. I've been on the women's magazine pages. He was married to Kelly by a Elvis impersonator in Las Vegas.
Yes.
And resultantly has 2 daughters and a mortgage. That's definitely women's magazine stuff, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
And was Honky the Wonder Horse amongst other characters on Brotown. Hey, Nathan, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you very much.
Good. I'll look at the time now just so I don't keep you too long. So what time did it start? What time do you start today?
So my alarm
currently presenter on Radio Sport.
Yeah, Radio Sport, yeah. So I've got my alarm goes off every morning at 4:15.
Yep.
And then again at 4:19.
Yeah.
And then in the shower by a couple of minutes after that. And then it's basically the race in to get ready, and we're on air at 6. So I sort of arrive in there around 5. Just sort of try to get there just before the 5 o'clock news, although just recently we've done this thing where I get to the motorway because I live in the northwest of Auckland, and coming out and they're relaying all the tar seal or what have you, so you get those weird bits. We end up going on these odd bloody detours out to Swanson or whatever to try and get around there. So it's but it's the greatest time of the day to work in Auckland because you can go on the motorway faster than 25 kilometres an hour.
Have you experimented with the shower the night beforehand?
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
It's got to wake you up.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't wake me up.
Yeah.
I know my wife has a shower before she comes to bed,
Yeah.
and I'm like, but that wakes me up. How can you do this or not? But that's her wind down.
Right.
So see, yeah, for me in the morning I've got to do that. And if I have one of those mornings where you sleep and you don't have a shower, just forget about it. So what I do is I make myself an espresso the night before,
Yeah.
and I have it in there because I just like espresso coffee. So
you have it cold.
yeah, so it's cold. So I come out, I neck it, and then I jump straight in the shower. And then basically just have the shower go in my mouth.
All the
right, I get
cream is
coffee.
gone, just...
Yeah, just straight in, because I figure all the goodness is still in there. But
I don't know, like, we talked about when you came in, because, we talked about basically both doing Brekkie Radio. It's funny now, I never would have said it back then, but I referred to us as kids, because, kind of relatively we were.
Yeah, we were.
And I really sort of hoped that you were, you'd say you were now getting up and having a nutritious breakfast and getting a couple of runs around the block and doing all that good stuff, but no. You came in with some amazing double deep-fried Canadian food and said, I can't eat till 10!
Some poutine.
Yeah, so tell us about poutine.
Poutine is the greatest dish in the world. It means mess. It's a Quebecois word, and it's starting to get used a lot more around the world right now. So the idea is to do it properly. You have French fries from the night before. You double fry them in the morning.
I'm looking at it.
Then you use a brisket gravy, and then you have to use curds, otherwise known as squeaky cheese. Not cheese.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like that Indian cheese, paneer.
Yeah, well, a friend of ours, David Riddler, of course, who nowadays works at NZ On Air,
Yeah.
I've taken him for poutine a couple of times. We went to a place and he goes, oh, look, there's poutine on the menu. We had it, and it came out and it had melted cheese on it, and he goes, this isn't poutine, this is melted cheese. And I was like, my man! He got it there as well.
Did you teach him that?
Yeah, I did, yeah. But it's delicious. It's an amazing...
But it's funny you say that, because the way, it's not something you'd present on a plate for MasterChef. It's extraordinarily
But see, that's the funny thing now, because all the big super chefs of the world, like Tom Colicchio and Bourdain and what's his name, Keller.
that gravy's nuts, man.
Yeah, no, the gravy's amazing. Yeah, Hubert Keller over there. Like, that's become the new thing for them to make, because the secret of a poutine is that you can't have one overpowering the other. So apparently it's some sort of thing now where in all these big restaurants in the world, like you say, there'll be this incredible plating,
Yeah.
but there's also poutine on there, and they use like pulled pork and brisket and stuff.
So you're saying they're all like about the it's about the balance.
It's
of
the
flavours.
balance, yeah, and that's it. It's apparently that's the key to it.
So you can pick it.
Yeah, I can pick a bad
So how
poutine.
was that one?
That's an awesome one. It's
Yeah.
from Al's in Auckland. It's my favourite.
And that's that place up the road,
Yeah.
next to the bottle shop. And
Alex Lasic's run it, and he's actually he's from Montreal, so that's what he's brought over with him. That's the home of poutine. Is
so if I
Montreal.
missed something, was Canadian food suddenly a thing here, or is it just poutine?
Oh, I think it's just poutine, and then it's sort of taken off. But he was the guy who used to make Al's bagels, and he makes them for the place.
Yeah.
And then apparently making bagels made him a bit bored. He was catering down at Vector Arena, and then thought, I'm going to have a go at starting up a cafe. And he did it in town, Al's Deli, and now he has 1, 2, 3. I think he's got 3, possibly 4 coming.
That makes sense, because when I'm like the armchair retail business guy. I go, that'll fail. That won't fail. And I've never had the balls to start anything myself, but 9 times out of 10 I'm right.
Yeah.
And so I looked at where that place was up on that, because it's sort of up on that rise, and there's not a lot of sun there and stuff, and there's a lot of places in Kingston. I was like, it's not going to do well, but you've just made it clear why it has, because he's on the map and people know who he is. And
I think any of those restaurants around, I mean, like I've been in Auckland now for 20-something years, and there are some cafes on Ponsonby Road that just live forever, and other ones that don't. And the ones that live forever, they just got good food at the end of the day. There's always which one's the wanky cool one to go to.
Yeah.
But that never lasts, eh?
He had a leg up in that he's known and so on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known about him and Poutine.
Yeah, poutine.
Poutine?
No, not poutine. Poutine.
So, I don't know. It's a man who must enjoy what he does that you've already done this for. Is it a 3-hour show this morning?
It was, 3 on air. So for between 6 and 9, and as we speak today, Joseph Parker's got a big boxing match coming up in 2 nights' time, so that was a big one for us today. That was our main focus. So we spoke to a guy called Bob Arum, who's like one of the big boxing promoters of the world, and he promoted Muhammad Ali and Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather, and he's just signed Joseph Parker. So we got him on to... Is
that a big coup? Is that a big get?
It is, yeah. He is good to get, but it's cool, and you kind of figure like, but it's cool just to have him, but what can the audience get out of this? So I'm thinking like, right, well, why don't you tell us how come you wanted to sign a guy from South Auckland who boxes?
Yeah.
What's the value in it for you? Because this guy here, he's just a businessman, right?
I was going to say that surely the first value is
exactly.
coin.
Yeah. So what is it? Why do you think this is? And then, so we got into that. What does he like about him?
And so what did he say about our Great Hope?
He said he really likes him. He said he's a guy that he thinks will go on to be the main name in world heavyweight boxing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was thinking about heavyweight fights. So if we go too far down this route on this podcast, we're going to seriously expose my lack of knowledge about sport. But
no.
I do generally watch a big ticket heavyweight fight when
Something
they come
about
on.
it, eh?
Well, it's actually when I saw When We Were Kings in the film festival in the late 90s. I was like, this boxing isn't what I thought it was. But anyway, there hasn't really been a really huge ticket heavyweight fights in the last few years, has there? Really big.
No.
So what's happened?
I've
thought about this. What's happened to that as a sport? Because it used to be such a big deal. Is it lack of promoting or lack of big fighters? Or
Well, it lasted for 100 years because it was unopposed. There was nothing up against it. And then what happened was, there was like a heavyweight championship, and as we spoke about with promoters, others like, well, we could make some money if we did one. So then you had like a WBO belt, then a WBC belt, and then an IBF,
right.
And it starts spreading out. And
then MMA comes along,
that's the
thing.
Then MMA comes along, and the boys that bought, particularly the UFC, like at least now with mixed martial arts.
I do know stuff. I know stuff.
The UFC that's the gold standard. So everyone around the world thinks, right, the UFC champ, that's the world champ, and they know it's a one-stop shop, and that's it. And boxing hasn't had that, and it's been very hard to get to that. So that's what, you know what I mean? It's just not identifiable.
You get me thinking about it as well. Like MMA's also got. Maybe boxing hasn't come along. I know it does have a good entertainment package, but I was thinking MMA's almost got a bit of superstars of wrestling in it, but it's real and it's brutal and it's kind of right. So that's the thing. So it's been superseded and kind of.
And if you go to a UFC show, I was lucky enough to go to one that was on at Vector last year. It's a show, and they get it right. They have just the best music. Like the music was awesome, and it's at a great level where it's nice and big. But even for sound nerds like us that like music, I'm sitting down there in the media. So I managed to get a media pass. So I'm just by the cage there, and I'm probably the only one in the media thing thinking, geez, they've mixed those mids and those basses just well. This is perfect.
But the thing is, if you don't know about that stuff with event planning, it could still ruin your night. You just don't know why. Because people come away and go, it wasn't that good. They go, why? Well, I don't quite know why, but it might be because everything sounded like crap and blah 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 blah. So are you like you don't seem a naturally kind of bloodthirsty guy. Do you get more bloodthirsty once you're sitting down there? Do you kind of get like...
It's really weird. So what I do is I'll buy the UFC pay-per-views. I usually buy each one, but I have a rule where I won't watch it when my kids are in the lounge, just because I think they're a little young to get it.
Right.
But for me, it's kind of weird. Like I admire that kind of courage under adversity.
Because it's extraordinary. It's like beyond me.
Yeah, and it is. It really, this is a strange thing not a lot of people know. It's actually the original Olympic fight sport, and it was called pancration, and it was actually, you go right back to the days, Thermopylae and all those sorts of boys there with Leonidas and all those guys. Well, that was their fighting style that they used, and it was actually
a combination of all
of that. And then what they said was, well, we need to break this down because you had a problem where I think it was Corinthians wouldn't fight each other. They're like, no, you can't. Why? Oh, well, when we fight to the death. So no, we won't. So they broke it into wrestling and boxing, and then that's where those came from. So, but the
but do you think the MMA guy, whoever's behind that, I don't know. Do you think they looked back to that, or it's a coincidence that they ended up developing the same thing?
It's a coincidence because so this one actually has its roots way back at the start of the 1900s in Brazil. That's where it comes from. It's called Vale Tudo there, which means anything goes. Yeah. So that pretty much tells you how many rules it were. So they opened it in 1993. There were these guys in the States that went, they went like, oh, this is great, because it was always that thing. Who'd win between a karate fighter and a boxer? Yeah. Who'd win between Bruce Lee and Hulk Hogan?
It's like a live video game.
It was. And
we can't get Superman and the Incredible Hulk, so we'll put it.
Unfortunately, there was one martial art is so dominantly ahead of the others, which was jiu-jitsu, but kind of became a little boring because they were always winning it. But back then, what they did, they sold it in like, this is the craziest, bloodiest, bloodthirsty thing you'll ever see. And I remember the first time I ever saw it, I'd heard about it, and then the first time I saw it...
Is this like going back to having a rusty VHS copy?
Well, this was far back? So it started in 93, and it was I was trying to work out where I was. 1996 it would have been. Yep. And I had a friend called Mike Shields who worked in one of the video shows. Remember when you were in that stage you're trying to impress people. So, oh yes, I'm watching this black and white French film. It was one of those places.
I did a French cinema paper at
and
uni.
Then he reaches down and he pulls this DVD out and goes, mate, watch this, it'll change your life. So we sit down and watch it, and the first fight, like a guy gets punched on the jaw and falls down, and the dude boots him square in the face. And we just, me and my two flatmates just basically paused it and sat there just with that look of horror, like, oh my God, what? Why would anyone watch this?
Now everyone's seen it on the internet by the time they're 8.
And so what happened was that sort of ran for a while, and then it started to run itself into the ground. And then a couple of guys from Las Vegas bought it. They're called the Fertitta Brothers, and you hit on it right. They were huge wrestling fans. And they went, let's do it. All the show, but the fights are real. That's what they do. And I think now what you're finding is one of the things which a lot of people don't realise is it has a 50-50 fan base of male and female. It's got to be one of the only sports in the world that's got that, because now, for example, a fighter like Ronda Rousey, see, she came along, and men that were watching MMA, when she came out and did her thing, they were like, yep, cool. And there's no like, oh, she's good for a girl. It's she's awesome at this. And so the female fighters, they're regarded as just the same. And I think that's a huge thing of it. And I know there was a great thing I saw on ESPN, and they were talking about, if you're over 35, it's boxing. If you're under 35, it's MMA. Like they don't know.
So I guess if we're kind of vague, maybe I'm on the cusp of that. But where I've learnt about MMA is actually, funnily enough, through my inspiration, or one of my many inspirations for this podcast, which is I ended up listening to Joe Rogan. Rogan's podcast.
Joe Rogan is magnificent.
Yeah, so it's that that weird 3 hours where 1 second they're talking about quantum physics, the next moment they're talking about their sex lives, the next moment he's always talking about weed and so on. But of course, there's a thing that he's a MMA guy, and he's what do they call him? He's a colour commentator, so he's like the guy who adds kind of japes and so on. But coming back to the jiu-jitsu thing, that's where I learned all about that through him. Is that kind of seems to be the most solid discipline to learn to do well in MMA.
And that came from Japan, when the samurai would drop their swords. Right. So it was if I stand at an arm's length from you, you're going to swing that and cut me. So I'm going to get right in close to you, and I'm going to make it so you can't use anything. And as I mentioned, in those first few UFCs, there was a guy called Hoist Gracie that won it all. And so my flatmates and I, we went on a trip to LA, and we were
to go and see that.
And we did the whole. Should we go to his gym? Yeah, so we did. So we went to the school just to see, and it was
Did you go and say, hi, we're from New Zealand?
He wasn't there, but his big brother was, that actually started the UFC, Horion. So
I didn't know you've been that. So you've been that into fighting that long.
So that was a pretty cool thing to do. Well, growing up in Hastings, I was very impressed by. I had a cousin who was a very good Muay Thai fighter. Another, one of those family cousins. Yeah, Maoris, we're all cousins. He was a very good karate fighter. That's thing as well. My dad was a huge boxing fan, so I guess all of those went through. But the one thing is I totally get that it's not for everybody, and it is, and it can be too much for some people. So you're like, well, that's fine. You're like, you don't have to watch it.
Look, I mean, I've had people, even with that, as I say, I was probably a bit of a, I don't know, I don't know how to phrase it, but I guess I was naive, and so when I've had other people make naive comments to me about, why do you watch the heavyweight fight when it's on and stuff, I'm like, watch When We Were Kings. Learn about Ali, learn about that whole phenomena of the fighter and so on, because it really was that moment. I remember seeing that film and just going, wow, that
was an incredible film, wasn't it?
Well, it also it made me realise that you can be closed-minded without realising it.
There's the mixed martial arts equivalent of that is a documentary called The Smashing Machine. And The Smashing Machine...
Poutine gravy.
The Smashing Machine is about a heavyweight UFC fighter, and it's an incredible story. And I've got to tell you, it's there's some awesome plot twists in it that I just like it. A friend of mine who's an incredibly hard film critic, nothing. He stood up and applauded at the end of it, and he went,
"Wow, did you see the festival or something?"
Yeah, and I'd got a copy of it, and I saw it and I bought it on DVD, and it came over and we showed it, and he stood up and he clapped, dropped an F-bomb, and went, "That's the best doco I've ever seen."
Wow,
that is incredible. And this is a guy that doesn't praise anything. So,
and so it's been out. Is it a new film?
No, it's not a new film. It's probably been out for about a decade, but not many people got to see it. I think the violence of it puts a lot of people off, but he talks about that. It's basically about this guy who came from American University Wrestling, which is where most of them come from, and there's even the bit with his brother going, I knew he's a good wrestler and stuff, but a fighter? Come on, I can be
grappling's a bit different to kind of...
to actually getting punched and
and
what happens
wounds and so on.
But it's I don't want to give it away, but no, really watch it. It's a great watch. There is some very bloody bits in it, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But there are some great parts in there as well, where, like, you know, you mentioned the story of it all and the emotional part behind things.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So is this what you do essentially on radio sport? Like how many? Because you just have to. I guess you, aside from interviewing skills and broadcasting skills and all those great things and gift of the gab and so on, you have to sort of come with an encyclopedic sporting knowledge for 3 hours a day. So, like, for example, how many songs get played over the 3 hours?
None.
You know, ads, so it's just ads.
Yeah,
and sports
ads. Mark Peards, our producer, plays some awesome music at the top of the hour and puts some little
So it's a similar format to live. It's predominantly chat. Every now and again, a bit of music if there's a changeover or something going on that has to happen.
Yeah, probably just in the background, because see, even if we play music, you play it for longer than a minute and a half, sports dudes text in, why are you talking about that? Talk about this.
You got to choose a theme from Rocky, or that's okay.
I used to really panic in it, thinking I've got to know everything about it.
Well, that's what I was thinking,
and I think you can. I hate hearing interviewers, whether it be music, whether it be film, whether it be, I don't know, something else. Say sport, and it'll be like something like, David Beckham, you played for Manchester United, then you went to Real Madrid, you did that, and what have the guys got to say left? They're like, yes. And sometimes you find that with a lot of sportos, is when they're interviewed, that question that's thrown at them leaves them nothing to say apart from yes. They kind of, and I know a lot of them actually, when you find them, they're are very into that thing where they realise that they're not academic animals, they're sports animals. Yeah. So sometimes you get a lot of them and they're worried that they're going to come across dumb in the first place.
Who, the person being interviewed?
Yeah, the sportos do. Yeah. And then you can find they get shut off with nothing. So what was really freeing for me was, like, there are sports I know about because I care about them and I love them, and I know I nerd out about things. That's just how my brain works. And there's other ones I don't know enough. Yeah. So I've learnt it's very freeing to go, hey, the Oceania football qualifiers coming up, you're playing New Caledonia. Man, I know nothing about them. What do you know?
No, that's great.
Because then the person actually gets a chance to tell you stuff.
Well, it's funny. This is going to be the fourth released podcast, and my 14 listeners have heard this 3 times before over the other 3 podcasts. But that's exactly what I've been saying to guests is I will Google you to a certain extent. Yeah. But then, God, imagine if I spent 2 days researching you like a university project before you came in. Yeah. Exactly for that reason. Yeah. And like with us discussing sport, I joked to you at the beginning, I know nothing about sport. I've kind of held my own. I've kept you talking about sport. Yeah. That's what it's about. I think it's just having enough to kind of banter off.
In any interest, in any sort of interview, I just think you have to be interested. Like you mentioned at the start there, and I mean, one of the most interesting thing I've ever got to do was we did a DNA documentary. Yeah. And so that was based with what university? Oxford University.
Oh wow, I didn't know
that. So they came about. I forget the doctor's name now that did it, but he wrote a book called The 7 Daughters of Eve, and he broke his arm. And he was in Rarere, and he said, so he couldn't fly out. And he said, I was kind of sitting there, and I looked around and I thought to myself, how did you get here? This is a hell of a long way. Like, how are human beings here? And so that's when he started to have a look at things, and he looked at that was just after the genome had been discovered and brought out. So
he's obviously not a creationist.
Yeah, no. So he went through that, and he asked them, where'd you come from? And if you go around most of the island cultures, their story is for Samoa, we came from rocks. We're hard. We came out of this, because that was the explanation of it. Yeah. And, the Cooks was the same, whereas the Māori are different. They're probably the only ones who say, well, we came from that country over the sea. And that was probably because they got here around about 800 AD after there, so it's been long enough.
But also, presumably they had an oral history where they passed that on, so hopefully it wasn't.
And also now, like we've learned, it wasn't big one mass migration at once. They were going backwards and forwards for years. I mean, we met some great people on there, but again, like, I'm not a DNA scientist. No. I don't know that, so it was just cool to find out. Yeah. We had an archaeologist as well. How cool is that? We went to an actual dig that's set up like not Ross Geller. This is a real bloody archaeologist, and we got to do some of that. And there were these ancient bodies and these skeletons that were there and stuff. He's pointing and said, "Well, see this guy here, yeah." So he's just being buried just as the probably a couple of hundred years before they're starting to build pyramids in Egypt. this person.
Wow.
And it blows your mind.
Yeah,
Some lapita pottery. So we found out about that. You find out all the different cultures. You end up going back to the valley where the Polynesians come from, and you walk in there, and seriously, to me, they look like miniature Samoans. They were small, but just the same skin tone. Everyone, that very Samoan tattoo, the one that looks like a band, but it's like triangles.
Yep, totally.
So my friend Oscar Kitely, he has that for his peta, and they were looking, they're going like, oh, you've got this, and they said, oh, you've got the snake. Why? And Oscar went, oh, actually, I don't know why we have this pattern. And they were saying, no, that's a snake.
That's a snake.
Yeah, it's a way. See, because then the snake knows that we're friends with it, so the snake doesn't bite us because the snake knows we can get us, but we're showing it that it knows that that
and
we.
So
know
where were these guys based?
So this is in Taiwan. This is when you go.
That's right, because the doco was referred to Taiwan.
So when you go to southeastern Taiwan, it's down around a city called Taidong, and that's the area. And there's tribes. There's the Bunun and the Amis, and there's a few others that are down that way, and they're slowly now starting to become quite a strong indigenous culture. So they refer to the Chinese population of Taiwan. They don't refer to them as Chinese. They call them Han. Yeah. So they're a Han, and then there's your Aboriginal, and they're called Narawan people. Is what they call themselves. So, but again, fascinating, man. And then we went to this museum there in Taidong, and there's a big wall of all these just normal people, from everyday people from tribes there in Taidong. And seriously, you look, and as a kid that grew up in Hawke's Bay, I'm looking, going like, that looks like my uncle in Wairoa. That looks like Chappie.
Like you said before, there's more cousins.
It is. It is alarmingly, alarmingly.
So is the basic theory postulated that all of Polynesia descends from this race of people in Taiwan?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which, of course, then from Polynesia, from the islands, leads to New Zealand.
It works on ice ages, and the other thing is what they said to us was, it works because some clever bugger invented the catamaran. Like, that in its time was the spaceship.
Well,
that was the thing that went forever.
I didn't interject when you were talking about that before, because it's already been talked about with, history and stuff, but that's the bit that blows my mind. When you say, they were going back and forth, it's like, I would have thought doing that once was, you'd lose a few people. And
well, they did.
They
did, and that's why, for example, like you mentioned, there's a bit there where we're in one of the ice ages, because what happens is, during an ice age, all the water gets sucked to the top and bottom of the planet, right? Because the ice sucks it all up there, and that's where it goes to. So water levels drop. So all of a sudden, everything that used to look like water looks like a low tide. And you could get out a lot further to launch off and go. So
is that what?
Right. So they made it down to Palau and then across to Fiji in the first lot, and then that goes back up again. So that's where you get your very distinct differences with Melanesians, who are darker.
This is so amazing. You learned all of this during the doco.
Oh yeah, and it stayed with me forever. I mean, when I did high school in Canada, I did anthropology, just purely because it was a subject you couldn't do here. So we were learning about the bones of Lucy and the Olduvai Gorge and stuff, in Africa. So as we were going through this, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting to this. And then there was the next wave that came across, and these were the ones that became the Polynesians. So there's the jump across to Samoa, and you had East and West Polynesia. You had your Western Polynesia was based around Tonga Samoa, and then your Eastern Polynesia was based over in Tahiti.
And so is this like, because history's like anything, theories come and go, ideas of what happened have changed over the years. Is this something, documentary or no documentary, that's kind of been commonly accepted by all Pacific historians now, or is it a radical theory? Or
it's interesting.
Well, not a radical theory, but you know what it's like.
I think yes.
It sounds good to me.
I'll give you an answer. I'll give you two answers. There are some people who are stuck very much in God made us, so that doesn't change.
Excuse me, some people, but I can discount that one. So I'm talking about theories of what actually happened.
There was another one where people said no, because remember they came from South America, because that's where the Kumara is from, and they came back this way, and they came across on these reed boats, which was was it Rapa Nui or whatever, the Kontiki. That was the guy that built it. Came across, that was his boat was called the Kontiki. But of course, the Kumara actually went up and around the top part. So you'll find that the North American Indians and that are actually of the same people from Southeast Asia.
To Taiwan, I should be a historian.
Yeah, and so they went up, they walked around the top and across there where Alaska and that is, that's where there was a land bridge, because again, during ice ages, everything gets sucked up to the top. They get around, they come into Canada, and then they start progressing down through the Americas. So that's how they get there, and that's why they're quite similar people. to your Polynesians and stuff. But as you mentioned before, like some people don't make it and they die off. So the Tongans in particular, they were this guy told us they were the greatest focus group in the world to do his DNA studies from. And it was like,
why is that? Because their race is so
pure,
it
just stayed.
Sort of like Japan, where it's 99% purity.
It was isolationist. It was very much there, and it stayed that way. So now of course you get a lot of Samoans and Tongans that have got surnames like Schuster and Wolfgram, and that, where the Germans came through. But that was pretty much where that came from. And all the basics was, he said, look, and this I'll try and explain it the best I can and fast as I can. He said, so just imagine that your DNA when it's cut out is like an entire library. The Auckland Public Library.
Yeah.
He goes, so there's all those now. In one of those books, on one of its pages, let's go page 117 on book number 6,000. He goes, the 17th letter, that's what colour your eyes are. And he said, what you find is that in Tonga, they've all got the same letter there.
Right.
And so
I know what you mean. So, but it's like, what you're saying, it's like that's DNA, and you just described how it is in crime or whatever. It's like the probability of it being anything else is ridiculous, because it's that millionth of a percentile of... And so in the Seven Daughters of Eve, what he did was he took his studies from down in the Pacific when he got back up to Europe, and he's done this with the 7 parts, because humans would move and they'd settle in an area for a long time, and then what you found is that they become quite similar to their ancestors, because everyone looks kind of like their mum and dad, right? So that's the basis of it. So, but in those days, of course, that's before transport and things like that, so they would stay in a same area for a long time, so you got very distinctive sorts of DNA because that was advantageous. For example, Tongans, man, big people, strong people. Yeah. So they had to make it across there for these crossings each time they branched out. Right.
And so, for example, see the Tahitians, slightly smaller people. Yeah. So somewhere along the way, their ancestor made it out that way, and it might have been with what they were eating.
I get it. So it comes back to, like you're saying, what I was saying, the ones that make it and the ones that don't define what the next race becomes. It's so interesting.
Yeah. And then Māori were kind of different, because they were coming down backwards and forwards. I mean, actually had from Rarotonga.
Right, yeah.
So, but that was the leaving point. For example, Taki Timu, which is the canoe that my family lineage goes back to. Well, Taki Timu is involved in the history of Samoa and that as well. They're going, no, that's a Samoan one, and there you can track it through. So clever people have been matching up all these stories and getting them in, so that and like you say, there's oral histories or whatever. But see, when we went to Vanuatu, which is a fantastic place for archaeology, because it comes out of the water at a steady rate.
Yeah,
it
sounds like you learned a lot in a short period of time.
Well, that's what I mean. It was so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is fascinating me.
And they found, as I was talking about before, you remember I was talking about the dig with the people and the burial, right? So they would bury them in reefs, and there was they'd put the bodies there, but they'd take the heads off and they'd take the forearms. The forearms would be missing. Now, Time magazine had just done a story about it at the time we were reading about it in the thing, in Teoma, and they were saying, these bodies found in Teoma, the heads were missing and so were the forearms. We may never know, right? But what we did was we went to this guy. There's a guy called Chief Mormor, and Chief Mormor is kind of like the Howard Morrison of Vanuatu. People love him. They go, are you going to see Chief Mormor? He's by the way, Vanuatu, friendliest place I've ever been to. Just amazing. Yeah. And what are you doing? We're here to do a documentary. Are we doing Chief Mormor? Oh, Chief Mormor's the greatest. So Chief Mormor shows up, and I'm expecting this guy carried in on some sort of throne and that thing. Chief Mormor pulls up in his Toyota Hilux with his Queensland State of Origin jersey on. Hello, boys. How are you? And that. Chats away. So we ask him about the heads and the forearms, and he says to us, "Oh, well, once you're dead, you're dead." Okay? Yeah. So what? He goes, so we would leave them, we'd bury them down on the reef. This is only about 3 generations ago we do that. And then the seagulls pick all the meat off that you need for a year. And then you go back and get them. And he said, and so you take the forearms and the heads. And we were right. So what do you take the head? And he goes, Kodak. And I go, what? And he goes, Kodak. And he goes, well, we didn't have photos, you see. So you take the head, and what you do is it's just a skull by that stage. So you model it with some clay, and you put it up in the lounge, and there's Nana. And and it's so there's that. I think there's that thing where I guess there's that thing. Some people say.
So that's not a religious nation.
Yeah, it's like you can't go too science because there are other bits that will help you with this. For example, that. Yeah, I mean, they regard flames as life. So there's an island there called Tanna, and Tanna's this volcano that explodes all the time. And he said, see, to us, when we think when you die, well, you must go over to Tanna, because, see, they've got flames, and it goes up, so there's a big party in there, and that's where all your old relatives were, and that's where your spirit goes when you die.
So there is a spirituality there. But okay, wow.
And isn't that funny? That's the exact opposite. You go into the earth where the fire is.
Yeah.
That's not hell for you. That's the greatest.
That's the greatest place.
That's the greatest place of all time.
And your body doesn't need preserving in a casket or whatever. You do need to make a plasticine model of your head and put it on the mantelpiece.
It was a cool connection for me, because growing up in Hastings in the 70s and 80s, when I was a kid,
it sounds fascinating.
we had I think we had 2 Samoan guys.
Yeah,
until you just didn't know them, and that. So
that's sort of opposite where I grew up.
In Wellington, very different. That was my knowing about Samoan people was when I'd go to Wellington to see my cousins, like they're at Rongotai and Wellington College and stuff. So you had their mate, George Laupepe or something. Right, is he Derek Jacobs, those Samoan guys? So
But there's a most. So after all of that. Where can we watch the doco, or was it just shown and shelved?
It's on, I think, NZ On Screen.
I thought it only had the trailer up. I have to have a look. So what's it called?
It's called Made in Taiwan. I'm pretty sure it's up on you. It was George Andrews produced it, and he did an incredible job, and Dan Salmon directed
and so how long were you and Oscar kind of on that project?
We were on that project for a month, on and off.
And without being sort of trite, but because it sounds like it was it sort of life-changing for both of you?
Yeah, completely.
Right. So it's much more than just a bit of media to get on air. It became like...
it was. Well, because, I don't know, I guess there's something... As you get older, you do get more curious about those kind of things.
Oh, totally.
And there was the bit where, when we went to the beach in Muri Beach there in Rarotonga, where the canoes would launch from to go to New Zealand, or down to Aotearoa in those days. For some reason, I sat there, and you're there, and I just felt a tear come. And it was that thing, and I didn't know, I wasn't prepared for it at all. You just started crying because it was that weird bit, and you
connection,
thought,
kind of a
wow, it was big. I mean, like my mother's dad. His family was from Aberdeen. So it was the same for them when they got on their boat to go right to the other side of the world to go, shall we just try it? Okay, and then imagine with these guys back then, because they hadn't seen pictures of Aotearoa or anything like that. All they knew was, if you head off to the horizon towards where Orion's belt comes out of the water, that gets you to the North Island.
And how did they know the North Island was there, though?
Well, see, so this is pretty...
I'm going to keep you going for 2 hours on this.
So the Māori story of creation is that... of the North Island.
The Maui caught...
that Maui caught it with his grandmother's jawbone.
Yeah.
Right, and pulls it up out of the water. So there's even oral histories now are starting to get thought, and it's like, I wonder if they're actually, what do they call them? Is it parables? Is that what they talk about? Where they go, it's not supposed to be a factual thing, it's a thing to help you remember. And this, we were sailing on a waka with a guy who was showing, he navigates by the stars and stuff. And he said, look, mate, just my own theory. And he goes, but in summer, he goes, because they arrived in summer because they talk about red. The red trees, and he goes, so that's Pohutukawas, because they made crowns of red and it all fell apart. So that sounds like a Pohutukawa. Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, so that's summer, right?
Damn crumbly crowns.
Yeah. And he said,
we all know the crumbly Pohutukawa crown. Come
those
on,
bloody things.
Yeah.
And he said, but you head down that way. He goes, and what you do, he said, is you wait to see where Orion comes out of the water. And he goes, don't you think that looks like a jawbone?
So and the stars, and
it was a thing.
And the constellation looks like the jawbone.
Yeah, and I thought, I wonder if and I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but to me, that's made so much sense.
It makes sense
because they had to tell them how to sail back. And again, you were going out there, like for example, the poor old Moriori, they headed out, and they were probably a couple of hundred years before, but they end up on the current that goes away, and they end up over on the Chatham Islands, and over there in Michael King's History of New Zealand, you'll read that as well. There weren't trees big enough to make waka out of. They had shrubs.
I thought he was the one that just... This is where I came when I asked you before about how universally agreed all of this was.
Yeah.
Because it was that... I thought it was Michael King... Someone prominent discounted Moriori on one of those books that I read.
Oh, no, not him. No. His was based on the Chatham Islands, and of course... they were, so many people confuse New Zealand history. I mean, they say, and then, so basically it was, they were living in Lake Taupo, and then Maoris arrived and hit them over the head and ate them. So what about them? But they were actually killed by muskets. That's why they were wiped out so fast.
We talk about people, no, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and so that was a displaced tribe from Taranaki who were basically told by these guys, actually, if you come over here with us and get out of that place, you can just shoot them all and take it. All right. But we still want the flax, was one of the things. People
who don't know as much as they should about New Zealand history We had something come up in a media class I was teaching about, what you identify yourself as. And so I started off talking about, funny, relates to your earlier conversation about identity and so on. Yeah. Like, I often reflect on how I'm kind of like, just being a Pākehā-born New Zealander, don't really know my lineage. I know mum's side's from Scotland, dad's side's from England, but I have no... Like, what would I go back and look at, kind of a thing? I don't have that as much of a sense of you.
You'd feel it, mate.
Oh no, I would. Well, my mother went back to Scotland and made a point of going back to like the family bookshop that still had the original surname on it and stuff. Yeah,
where in Scotland is it?
Up north, I think. Yeah.
Right. Oh,
sorry, but I'm going off a little off track.
Ours are from Aberdeen.
So it came back to identity, right?
We might be related, bro. Yeah,
we're all cousins, bro.
Yeah.
But yeah, coming back to the identity thing and people not being that informed, it was like one of those kind of awkward classroom moments where I was like, what do you refer to yourself to? Speaking of us, New Zealand Europeans or whatever, I call myself Pākehā, and we went around the class and there was a few sort of awkward silences, and I eventually deduced that a number of students in the class had somewhere along the line been taught that Pākehā meant something like white pig.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, how are we going to get anywhere in New Zealand?
Oh, I know.
How are we going to get anywhere in New Zealand with a kind of communal narrative when I've got students at university level who think Pākehā means white pig?
Yeah, someone along the line I mistook Poaka. I think is where that's come from as well.
Sounds like some opinion piece in the Herald 15 years ago or something.
Do you know what? Or it was convenient for them to say that that's what it was.
That's what I'm kind of getting at. That's what I'm kind of getting at.
My father, he didn't speak English till he was 7. Wow. He was raised in Mahia, very, very way out into the country, so he spoke Māori. So he was one of the New Zealanders who went to school, and of course you
had the Māori whacked out of him.
Beat out of him, yeah. So he was caned, and if you were caned, or if you spoke it 3 times during the week, your name went up on the board, right? And so it was a thing like out playing on the field, you might accidentally call out for the ball, and then you come inside, your name's on it, and you're being caned. And there's 6, and there's 7.
How many years of our history was that? 50 or 60 years?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. And I
tell my students about that because it needs to be heard, because it's not that when we sort of took into this. Race relations stuff's quite awkward to talk about in a classroom.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's like, I think if you don't know that sort of thing, you at least need to hear it. If you get the language whacked out of you, what else have you got as a foundation, as a kind of a basic building block for everything else that goes with it?
And that was the idea, and you couldn't actually vote in New Zealand until 1976.
That's astounding, really.
And ones like those. So it was just things like, Dad.
So we're all like, women's suffrage. Woo!
Yeah. Just the white ones.
Yeah.
No, well, you see, you couldn't if you were counted as half caste. Yeah. No, then this is ours.
That'd be terrible these days.
So there they are when they're 7, having their arms held against the sides of their body while the principal comes in. Remember those little blocks of soap at school? Eat this.
Oh, those little soaps.
Actually rammed into their mouths. So what happens is that you find a lot of those guys, and if my dad was still alive...
Have a soap phobia?
He'd be nearly 80. No, they talk, they mumble. Yeah. They really mumble because, of course...
their confidence taken out of them.
And then, of course, what would happen was you'd get back to home, Mum doesn't speak any English, you're talking in English, what are you talking about? What are you saying? What are you saying about... Because she doesn't know, so you get a hiding there. So
you're in a lose-lose.
Yeah, you get a lot of them that just retreated into themselves and didn't talk a lot at all. So that's why I think a lot of people... I guess now...
start going, well, why are you doing so well?
And that's where that general distrust of school came from, and that as well. And it used to
then also that distrust of the whole European system and so on, because it's... Yeah,
and there's one of the things I love about James Bellich's history of New Zealand is
he was a teacher of mine at uni when I was very young.
He must have been awesome to go to lectures with.
I mention that because I vividly remember him as a first year history lecturer because he was so good.
Yeah, and there are heroes and villains on both sides. It's like there were people that in an ad in the paper in England went, look, we can go to this new colony, we can do this out of good faith. They paid their money out of good faith. They got on a bloody boat which might kill you for being in, and you avoid scurvy and everything else you got. You make it the whole way around the other side of the planet. They go, here's your farm you've got, and you just go onto the farm and this is great. And then so they feel, well, we've had the farm since then. But then obviously there were people who were moved the heck off there, or even worse, it was like what used to happen was there'd be land buying things, and it would be, for example, there's the Davis family farm, but a relative of the Davises goes, well, I'll sell it to you. Good, there you go. And signs it off, and then it's not really yours. So that's where a lot of that comes from. But my grandfather, Te Aki Omana, is one of his things when he was in Parliament, he was the MP for Eastern Māori.
Yeah.
One of his things was very much to get the land claims done properly, because what a lot of people don't realise is the reason that we're in these long cases now, people go, oh, can't the Maoris just let it go? And that is that what happened was when they were allowed to do them in the 40s and 50s, do you know how long they had to state their case?
Go on.
They had a morning. Who does any sort of case in a
break
morning?
down decades of complexity,
Exactly.
the issues around the treaty, the tensions between Māori and Pākehā,
and then
my birthright and so on. Okay, well, you've got, counting the tea break, you've got an hour and 40 minutes.
So that's why these come, but again, that is another piece that gets lost. Like when I hear someone ring up Leighton Smith and, buddy, this thing, that doesn't ever get put to them.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I think, and that's the tough thing, because I guess, see, for me, like I've got a European mum, I've got Polynesian dad, so I can see both parts of this as well. And like I say, I think New Zealand actually worldwide, we're actually really good, man, as far as we go. The worst thing that happens is just before Waitangi Day, you get people ringing up ZB. Oh, I just hope the Maoris don't ruin Waitangi Day again. And do you know the worst thing that happens? Someone throws a T-shirt.
Yeah, I do like your optimism, but as we've it's amazing how conversations come full circles, like talking about things like talkback and comment sections and so on. I think that you definitely see when people have got anonymity, there's an unfortunate and quite sad undercurrent of what people think about, stuff.
Because I think people are just worried now. I mean, this is a world where, that global financial crisis affected everybody. And it's tougher for everyone. And I think people think, it's just the way the government's doing it that's making it wrong. But, in the States, how the whole Make America Great Again, it's everyone's had unemployment. Everyone in the world is having these things, So it's a tough thing, and I think it's the feeling of I'm losing my part.
Dangerous of doing the next 40 minutes on politics, but I read this amazing opinion piece, and I thought it was amazing probably because it was similar to my opinion this morning about how we've sort of got to get away from pinning, as Western societies in general, kind of pinning all our hopes on a money guy fixing it all, because a money guy often doesn't know how to fix societal stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's not talk about John Key resigning for the next.
No, I'm going to say it's got to be a tough job for any of them, eh?
Oh yeah. You signed up for it though. But I do like what you said about that somewhere along the lines in the last few minutes you talked about not just taking sides or whatever, and I suppose we're talking about with the Māori and Pākehā thing and so on. But with the whole Key resigning thing, actually, because I do a little opening for each of these podcasts, so I don't really want to get too far down that track on this pod in general, but I mean, it happened the day before I was releasing the podcast.
Right.
So the idea is I do a little 5 to 10 minute kind of rant before I introduce that pre-recorded guest.
Yeah.
And that's mainly what I talked about around Key resigning, was that what I notice in my Facebook feed and so on, and this is talked about all the time, it's not some new idea from me, is people are really factioned and kind of separated off these days.
Yeah.
And I actually became really tired in the election and around when Key resigned as well, is a number of my left-wing friends coming off as nutty and as extreme and as without balance or information as a crazy extreme right-wing person, and it was coming back to that information thing you talked about. Look, whatever your opinion is, input is, you just make sure you are informed on what you're going to talk about. Yeah. Otherwise, no one wins if everyone's like, it's...
I find it weird when politics turns into cheering for a sports team. No,
but social media amplifies that.
But you know what I mean?
Live in that bubble. Totally.
It's the whole, I'm only cheering for my guy because this is my guy. Okay, I don't agree with what he did, but I'm just going to do it. It's like, no, you should be free enough to go. I think it was Chris Rock did a wonderful thing about, was it being slightly liberal and slightly conservative?
Yeah, which is getting older. You become more centrist, I think, as you get older sometimes.
Yeah, so you can't be all this and all that. No. I mean, I'm a lefty, yet for me, I look and I go, well, do you know what, Labour? You've been crap at politics. Yeah. Those guys are way better at politics than you. Yeah. And that's why you're not in there. And that's why, and I know a lot of people get mad about, John Key did that thing. And I go, but that's their system they've got. So rather than complaining about it, just get better at politics. Yeah. That's really where they've lost.
I'm with you all the way. And I'll forward you that opinion piece after today. And the other thing I mentioned actually was I don't buy into the narrative that Mr. Key is some evil kind of, Mr. Burns-esque, character. Yeah. I think he's just more. Just was more, as he said, the excited schoolboy that got the job. And I was halfway through that rant in my intro, and I was like, oh my God, this has echoes of Trump. The sort of money guy was like, oh well. What else can I do? I have a go at that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Pull out of politics. We're going to talk about something else.
Okay.
So anyway, how'd you get on the radio when you were 15 or 16 or something? That's probably wouldn't happen these days, man.
No. I got lucky. I went to
$80,000 student loan and 6 hours of broadcasting
No,
school.
thank God I didn't have that. Thank God I didn't have that. I applied to broadcasting school, didn't get in.
Yeah.
They said not with a voice like yours. I was like, oh, okay. And then I went back to high school to do 7th form because I'd come back from. That's when 7th form was still a thing. I think it's year 13 they call it.
12.
I'd come back from Canada, done high school over there, and while I was over there, one of my sponsor parents they ran a radio station. I remember thinking, this looks cool, and it played country music.
Yeah.
Dinger, dinger, dinger. And I remember thinking, like, this is pretty darn cool. And a friend of mine, while I'd been away, he'd actually got a job at the local radio station, 93 FM, you know, the one you always listened to as a kid, and you're like, yeah, it's the cool station.
When there was provincial radio.
Yeah, exactly. When the cool guys on at night, he's doing the hot 9 at 9, I have to listen, you know.
Ours was Mark McLeod on ZM
Yes,
in Wellington.
it was Mark McLeod.
He used to talk about surfing at my local beach.
At Lyle Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was that. So my friend David had a job there, and he said, come on, have a look. So I went to have a look. I'm standing in reception, and the guy comes out, Graham Parsonage, who ran it. And he goes, oh, do you want to come in here? I was like, okay.
And how old are you? 16?
Yeah, I was 17
Yep.
at that stage. And then he says to me, right, so you want a job, do you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, great. Well, we've got David. I don't know if you know David. I go, yeah, I know David. Okay, great. Well, David needs an assistant to put things onto tape. Blah, 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 blah. That's good. And we have a chat. So I've got to get this job where I'm loading commercials onto that. And he goes to me, okay, Brad, well, thanks. And I went, no, it's Nathan. He goes, oh, I thought it was Brad. I went, no, Nathan. Oh, okay. We'll sign you up here and that's the thing. Not realising that a friend of mine from school called Brad Betty, who looked quite similar to me, had been going up to 93 FM with his CV there a couple of times. And
Does Brad know you stole his job?
I guess so. Well, he went on to do very well. He's a dentist now, so he's.
I was going to say, one of those things he sees you like he sees you on TV and he goes, Nathan Rarere.
Yeah, so that was my job, and then I ended up. It was the middle of the year, so that was my after school job. It was great because before that, my after school job. I had two. One was working in a gun club. You know, the clay target shooting.
Yep.
I used to sit in the trap and put the clay targets on the mechanical arm that fling them out, and pray to God my fingers weren't on it when I put one on. And the other one was I worked at a hay grinders, which was out, ride your bike out and get snot that was full of hay. So I ended up in this job. Long story short, a guy got fired, someone else got fired, and they said, hey, you know how to work the desk, can you work the desk between midnight and 6 tomorrow? So I was like, okay. So I did that. That went pretty well, and
Were you terrified about talking?
yeah, I was. Yeah. Well, because I'd been told my voice wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So I did the midnight news, and then it got through to 6 in the morning, and the breakfast host was all set to go, and he was filling in at that time, and it was kind of really weird for me because he'd been my favourite, your favourite DJ.
Yeah.
You're like, it's Darren Knight. Oh, he's here. Well, so going to get to.
I so relate to this.
And he says to me, look, I'm Jehovah's Witness. I can't read out birthday calls. Can you hang around and do the birthday?
Why can't they read out birthday calls?
It's part of their thing. They don't do it. It's
right.
They don't do pagan ceremonies. So I was like, okay. So I ended up reading out the birthday calls for him, and I did it in a character voice, which was one that I used to do with one of my teachers. And he went, hey, that's pretty cool. Tomorrow, can you do it again? Okay. And he goes, and I come in and he goes, oh, I've written you a couple of jokes, do these. And I was doing theatre sports at the time, and then this became an on-air character who hung in there, and I had jokes. And then when the regular host came back, he's like, why don't you stay doing this? And then they offered me the Midnight Till Dawn job. So for the last term and a half, I'd basically get up at 11 at night. My dad would wake me up. I'd bike into town on my bicycle. I'd go to work. I'd do midnight till 6 in the morning, 6 to 8. And then I'd get on my bike and I'd bike to school.
You're doing school as well?
Yeah, and then I'd go school through till midday, and I had a fantastic teacher called Greg Cook, and he'd done student radio. Yeah. And he said to me, isn't it the greatest? And I went, it really is.
Wow, this is so cool.
And he got it. And so what they'd do is I'd have a meeting with Mr. Cook and the others at lunchtime, and they'd talk me through what the afternoon's work was. And then I'd ride home on my bike at about 1 in the afternoon, have something to eat, go to sleep, and then wake up again 11 at night,
And you were sleeping okay in the afternoon?
Yeah.
But then the only chink I can think of in the story, was there anyone else at your school kind of going, why is Nathan going 12 o'clock and get to school, get his radio show? And
yeah, well, they knew it was 2 in the morning, Because what was quite cool...
I mean, other students just being like...
Oh, there might have been.
That's great. That's so progressive, man.
Yeah, but it was really neat. Hastings Boys, I mean, what a great thing to do. And that was just a kid who really wanted to do it, and they saw that.
You ever gone back?
Yeah.
I love doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's neat. Yeah, it was really cool, actually. I got to go back.
And was he still there, Greg?
Yes. Yeah, he was. So it's cool to see him, with that. And just a huge influence on everything, really. It was all Mr. Cook.
And did you got through bursary and everything?
Yeah, I did, yes. And what was really neat was, like, before some of the exams, obviously the guys were like, hey, he's at the radio station. So I had this study group up there at about 2 in the morning, you're like, guys, come in. So there's like 18 of us all doing mass studying.
Oh, all the other students are coming
in. Also, but that was in the day, because, of course, you had a big vinyl record collection.
You go, hang on a second, this is blah, blah, blah,
that's
blah.
what I was doing, But the guys were doing that, they're all bringing up C90s and making tapes. Oh, I'm going to put this on. So it was before, even though it was commercial radio, it was before it was restrictions on what to play. It sounds more like student radio. No, there was definitely the playlist and all that sort of stuff to follow, but, you'd load the songs into the system and then you just keep them there as a hard copy on vinyl.
But they were, I'm pretty sure, like thinking about something like Mark McLeod, because it was ZM, it was called probably 2ZM back then.
Yeah, it was 2ZM, yeah.
I think they did have more freedom even on those bigger... stations to play some of what they wanted.
Well, it was easier to break format because it wasn't all on the computer.
Right.
That's what it was, because you could just grab another LP and play it, or another cart.
But you wouldn't load something into the computer of your own today and not get in trouble. You'd still get in trouble, wouldn't you? It's so monitored. A
friend of mine came back, Phil Lemon, he came back from overseas. He was your first mate that went off and did an OE.
Yeah.
He brought back a tape and said, man, this song's just come out in England, it's the biggest. So I loaded it onto a cart, and that was I'm Too Sexy. And we were the first station. He just playing Right Said Fred, and I was like, oh wow, it's the greatest thing in the universe. And he also brought back A Tribe Called Quest, Can I Kick It?
Yeah, so you wouldn't drop that into the Edge's computer these days.
Well, I tried to put that on there, like, what is this? Get this rap off here.
Yeah.
There's rap on there, but, so you get the other one. But
And it's been talked about since, it's been written about, but I actually remember hearing it. In Wellington, there was a no rap, no crap.
Oh, yeah. Ross Goodwin.
On ZM.
Ross Goodwin.
No rap. Yeah. No crap.
He was the program director who came up with that, Ross Goodwin, and funnily enough, he went on to be the program director of My FM. So
wow.
Yeah. Then things change.
So right, yeah. And then so how long? So you get out of school. You got a gig. So no reason to go to uni or
well,
whatever?
I was going to go to uni. I forgot to tell Victoria that I wasn't actually coming. Right. So they sent me a bill at the end of the first semester from at the what's the accommodation house called there again?
Oh, there's a few of them.
Yeah, whatever the main one was.
Yeah.
I nearly said Mason, but that's down at Wellington College. No. Anyway, whatever it was. So they sent me that bill to come back, and then so I worked the midnight till dawn shift. Did that for a while, and that was cool down there because you got to do everything. Like you're 19 years old, you're making $8,000 a year, but everything's all the cool stuff's paid for. So like the weekend, you're out at different bars doing
and you've
promos.
Always got good tickets to stuff,
it's just fun to do. Like you're driving around the beach in a cool old car, handing out cold cokes.
Oh, well, you're
to
doing
people.
it. So this is different now. So
you're doing
a bit of everything.
Bit of everything.
So you're a promo guy, on-air guy, writing ads guy,
voicing ads.
Because your actual a lot of your kind of crust over the years being the writing side of things, right?
Yeah. I'm a writer. I still regard myself as a writer by trade. That's
mainly ad copy or just whatever needs writing?
Yeah, mainly. I mean, I've written a few things. I've written the TV awards twice. Wrote the music awards.
Oh, you've written the gags.
Yeah.
Did you write Tiger's gags? Oh no, that was
no. So we'd write the whole show. From way through. So I've written a couple of those. Wrote scripts for intro, outro stuff.
But do you write the stuff in those? Just out of interest, like do you write the stuff on the teleprompter for the guests?
Yeah.
So okay. And do you sit, if they've got a particular style, do you sit down with them to make sure that your gags fit their?
Well, that's where you say, "I'm sending you the script. Please read it 3 or 4 days beforehand and change it." Like I had a boss at TV3 called John McDonald, and he used to give us a script like that. He'd go, "So there it is. You do it now. Just Nathan it up." Turn it into your language, because that's the only way it comes out of an auto cue sounding natural. But the thing is, so many and they don't read it.
I was going to say, do you ever watch those roasts, those Comedy Central roasts?
Yeah.
Well, there was one recently. It was I'm going to forget on the spot who was being roasted. That doesn't matter so much. But there was a really reviled right-wing commentator on. I'm going to forget her name too.
I know who. Ann Coulter.
But anyway, Ann Coulter, and she just got she just got, honestly, like, so much vitriol. Like, some of the jokes, I was like, it's like this, like hands over my, so I can only look through my. But then I listened to a really interesting podcast with this comedian who's written copy for a lot of the roasters over the years, and he said that they actually set her up, despite the fact that they got no interest in Trump and her and so on. They set her up to be a likable villain, and she was just so arrogant and so like
that
whatever. She just
work.
kept changing it, did it all her own way, and then went out to the whole world and just got. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Can you remember who was being roasted? I can't remember who was being roasted.
But you see, that's her not trusting the writers, I guess, and not trusting that you'll look after them.
Yeah.
You know, as a writer in that. Because you do that when you're writing it. I mean, like, as a writer in the back room, you need to be thinking, I'm going to write something that's going to make this person look awesome. Like with a lot of on-air stuff over the years where I've been an anchor person, so you manage the top and tails of voice breaks, the one thing you had to do was, I'm going to make whoever's on air with me sound awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to feed them great things. We're not going to shut them out. We're going to do this. Because it's their chance to shine, and people hear me all the time. Let's make the other person great.
Yeah.
But she obviously hadn't trusted that it would happen.
You know, as someone being roasted who actually took it remarkably well, Trump actually did okay when he was roasted.
Right, yeah. Flavor Flav did as well. You know, like he did as well. But I think that's the thing. It's a level. There's a whole level of security in being able to laugh at yourself, because that's something that comes with age. You know, a lot of people just can't, particularly when you're younger, because you're not quite sure what's okay to give. You know,
I don't know if I could be roasted today. It's pretty full on.
They are.
Like, but then, I don't know.
There was a radio industry one once
in New Zealand.
Oh,
who got roasted? Did you roast or roast?
No. I went along to watch, and
surely they just ply everyone to the gills with booze as well.
Well, when they said they were doing it, they did like, right, we're going to have one
radio.
radio.
You're whispering, but we're recording.
It's like the whole. There's one radio company against another, right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And my mate Dave Funny, who is a big, tall Samoan guy, very, very, very funny comedian.
Yeah.
Dave arrived kind of late, and he goes to me, "Oh, so what is it? It's a roast day, just like that thing on MTV." Like, yeah, there we go. He'd missed the fact that these people beforehand had been doing sort of polite jokes about each other. Dave goes up.
He just goes in there.
Oh my god!
Without planning anything, he just did.
He tore into it so bad, and it just became the story in the paper about this horrible man had come in and said these things and just left people shocked. And he's up there, but the thing was, he delivers some opening gags which I thought were just hilarious, and then you realise I'm the only person laughing.
So was it just roasting anyone from the opposition, basically?
Yeah, and then there was a whole lot of advertising people there, because you're trying to find ways.
The radio bureau sitting there going, this is awkward.
Yeah. Don't make it. And he gets in. Who's here from Saatchi's? Gets into Saatchi's. So it was, so I guess there's different levels of roasting that you're used to, but it's hard to get to that stage where you're comfortable with jokes being about you, I think.
Yeah. As I say, my verdict's out. I mean, an hour and a half or however long it is in front of an international audience. And as for David, I mean, that's pretty talented, because as we've just talked about, I think a lot of those are massaged out over months.
Yeah.
So for him to just come in and destroy the place...
He was awesome.
Ad-libbed.
So funny. But Dave's just brilliantly funny anyway, with anything he does. I mean, when we were voicing Brotown, I used to love hanging around a bit longer to watch him, because the cool thing about voice acting is that, you can get your whole body into it and do stuff. Yeah. And you've got the little camera which is on top of the mic that films your lips, so that the editors can, or the animators can
get your lips,
make it match. Yeah. But just getting to see those guys are absolute artists, and it's you feel really honoured to... Yeah. I kind of felt like I was playing the tambourine in the back of a Motown song.
Have you got Netflix?
Yes.
What I watched the other night is that Aardman celebration doco. That's worth watching, because there's footage of people speaking in the booth and stuff. But it's great. Just a general thing on how great animation is.
There's a whole lot of stuff with Nick Park and that in there, is it?
Yeah, first time I sort of seen them, I learned a whole lot of stuff about them. I didn't realise that Nick Park wasn't the original Aardman, and that there's actually no person called Aardman. It's two other guys, and I didn't know that Morph is the original Aardman.
Loved Morph.
Do you remember Morph?
Yeah.
So that's where Aardman comes from that character. And he's I guess it's a he, is still around. The other thing you told me about, because we've talked before, about Brotown that I found interesting, is that Jeff the Māori was any number of you, right? Wasn't just one person voicing?
Yeah, it was Dave, but sometimes Shimpal would voice it if he was there and Dave wasn't around. Sometimes, Mario's doing it every now and then, Oscar as well. It's basically, that was the great thing about Jeff. So Jeff's voice, for experts, have a listen, it slightly changes every now and then with those. But I mean, that was a great success story. story for those guys. And what was neat for Oscar was when it was picked up by Cartoon Network Latin America. So they bought.
They voiced it in
they revoiced it
in Spanish.
Yeah, they revoiced it into Spanish because the thing was, they said, well, there just aren't that many cartoons made with brown people as the stars, and that being Latin America is where it is. So, and then Oscar was saying about how he'd had to.
Did he go over there and oversee the Spanish?
Well, he'd had to rewrite the script of it and say to them, look, because he's trying to, Dad. Remember Dad and the Dad character.
Bloody that guy.
Yeah, that's it. But he had to explain to them why that was funny, and he goes, that weird thing he said, and it's wrong.
So you've got to find the Spanish equivalent of the kind of
he goes,
I guess Bobby kind of dad, because there will be.
It is. And he goes, and I'm having to write stuff like, okay, well, he confuses singulars with plurals, and he uses the wrong consonant on the things of words.
I'm sure there's a version of that in
there
every
probably
culture.
Is everywhere, I think, yeah.
There has to be, man.
But it was Jeff the Mexican over there.
Really?
That's what he was. Jeff
so what were the rest of them?
I think they were just general from there. And I know there was an episode with I think where they had the Warriors in the original Brotown, which I think ended up being like the Argentinian football team, or something like that,
cool.
or Boca Juniors, or one of those big clubs over there.
Have you ever watched it? Even though
no, I've never seen it. I'd love to see it because I'd like to see it, and I'd like to see because I was like a. I was like one of the satellite voices who'd come in, and when they needed other character voices,
Honky the Wonder Horse.
Honky the Wonder Horse. I was a German designer. I was.
Oh, you're like this, very kind of flamboyant.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. So and it was great. And I scored ring me and be, hey, bro, can you do a German? Yeah. Okay, cool. Can you be here in like half an hour? Okay.
This is got me thinking. Like, so was anyone dicks about it? Like, oh, you guys shouldn't be doing a stereotypical Māori because you're not Māori. You shouldn't be doing a German like that. Yeah. People.
Yeah, they do.
Say, there were some dicks. Because I was an Aussie. I don't know the local feedback.
Yeah, because it ended up on SBS over there. I think.
All I did was my mum sent me the DVD.
Oh,
for Christmas.
Great! Yeah.
So all I got over there was showed it to my girlfriend, and why is Jeff the Māori called Jeff the Māori? And I'm like, because he's Māori, and she's like, I thought they were all Māori. Yeah, and I go, no, we're going to explain to all the other.
Yeah, there's some Samoans and a Niuean in there as well and stuff.
So some people were a bit funny.
Yeah, they were, but I guess unfortunately for us, it was him that had to wear that. Even when he wrote Sione's Wedding, I remember he said they did the talked about it. I think it was might have been an AUT or something. He talked about it. He said in the first question, this girl stands up and goes, "Why do you always, why do you always paint our men as idiots?"
Because it's a lightweight comedy, and it's not a.
It's the people that I grew up with, and that's how we interacted, and that's these as well. So, but comedy's a weird.
But the other thing is, sorry to cut you off, but and I don't know whether I agree with this or not. It sort of makes sense, but. You've got more license if you're from within that culture.
Yes, you do. Yeah,
Actually, no, I do agree with that. If I say I don't agree with that, but
it's like that thing where it's the whole. Do you know what? You can call your mum, your dad, you fat old bugger. But if someone else does, that's really shit.
You go, hey?
And that's the best. That's my analogy that I always try and get people. Well, how come they can?
No, you're right. You're right.
That's where that comes from. Is that kind of thing? But I don't know. I mean, I really feel for that because the problem is with comedy, you laugh out. Generally, you laugh out of some form of embarrassment for the subject. That is generally what a lot of comedy comes from, is things like that happening. But now I have a look at, the I hate using that word, but the millennial age comedians, they operate very differently because
I've been listening to a lot of commentary about this, that whole PC gone mad kind of thing.
No, it's just finding in humour and whatever the different thing is. But theirs isn't so much of an insult comedy or something like that. So again, that's it. And it's interesting to me to see how that works and where you're finding other jokes. You'll still, heck, I don't know. I still look at South Park and they're cutting social commentary.
Apparently they're killing it with the election commentary this season.
Those were just the giant turd versus the douche.
I haven't seen
the giant douche versus the turd sandwich is just brilliant. They've even got the dad is an internet troll now. It's so funny. But they hit on these things so well, and I guess that's it. Different generations find different things funny, though.
Well, the other thing was when I was in Australia and watching it, as I say, I was away 6 or 7 years, and so you get easily homesick when you're over there. And I just watched it and I thought, what a great representation of New Zealand that I've never ever seen on screen before. This is Brotown. Yeah, so, but then I could see how it might, as I say, it might be construed by, say, wowzers. That's like a terrible Paul Henry term to use.
Yeah.
Hey, so from that, we talked about when you came up and chatted to my students, and afterwards I was asking you about, and I think it was related to when we talked about so getting a little bit more serious again. Would something like that have been around when you kind of started? Because we talked about, like I said to you, I basically frankly said to you, hey man, have you encountered kind of racism in the industry? And you said sort of earlier on you did. But,
Yeah, I won a broadcasting award as best new broadcaster, and the person that came second was telling me that she'd she actually came up. She was quite upset.
Is this in the 90s?
Yeah, it's right. She said, I was talking to one of my bosses, and he said, they only gave it to him because he's Maori, that thing. And
it was really smart, man. Did that make you feel like shit?
Yeah, it did, because I was young and I was new to the industry. Fairly, I'd been around for about a year and a half, so it does. That's
awful.
It does really sting,
especially since she's the second place.
No. She was actually upset on my behalf. She's like, I can't believe this.
Sorry.
That's the thing. She said, he said that about you. I'm really hurt.
She shouldn't. She should have kept her mouth shut. You're reading that wrong.
Exactly,
I think she was because you were second place.
But again, it's I think that as well. So, you do get that. You get along the way. You used to hear a lot of it on the way around. The refusal to try and pronounce words correctly, because that's how we always say it around here. A lot of that kind of thing, which again is hard for me to go, because in me, I've got both parts. You know what I mean? So
but the way a place is supposed to be pronounced is the way a place is supposed to be pronounced.
Yeah, it's its name.
I've been here 40 years. I can make the effort.
Yeah. I mean, see, my surname trips a lot of people up, and they won't even try it. Or
is it Rarere?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's like if people go Rarere, it's like it's really hard with a hard R. Like my wife, she her maiden name.
Stutters would hate it.
Yeah. Well, her maiden name was Toynbee. She said she got sick of having to having to respell her name for people. I mean, cool, it's not going to get any easier. Don't worry about it. But she finds that because she's Pākehā, but she finds it's easier to say when she rolls the R's, and it just falls out easier. But I would have people in broadcasting who would refuse to say my name properly that way, yet they could roll the shit out of Ferrari.
True.
The next thing, fine. If it seems like it's cool and it's Italian and awesome, then that's fine.
I see
but
what you mean.
I'm
So
not...
it's a stubbornness block.
Yeah.
But the reason I have weird things that suddenly pop up, I've got a Māori guy and I better ask you about racism, is because I actually just remembered why I asked you about that after the AUT chat, is because on screen at least, you've had a lot of roles, or on air, you've had a lot of roles that aren't necessarily too politicised or whatever.
Yep.
So, it's in relation to Brown Eye, because, hey, what a great name to start with. So,
Bailey Mackey, genius.
Current affairs from a Māori perspective, was it fun doing something more politicised, or am I being a bit grandiose about that?
No.
It wasn't more politicised. It just seemed a different vehicle for you to...
I hadn't been as... feeling like I was heading into a huge challenge since probably the first time I did radio.
Yeah.
Back to there. Because all of us
come back.
Yeah, because things matter in there. And I guess people knew me as light entertainment guy who
so I have kind of got
a bit of a joke as well.
Yeah.
But obviously I'd had quite a few interests in my life. I mean, even when I was 16 and I went to Canada as a Rotary exchange student, there you're dealing with Rotarians, and they're very different to who you dealt with. So there's a lot of politics comes into things there as well. So when we got back to do things like Brown Eye, it was cool to get to run through a lot of this kind of stuff. It was really great to do it. But it's a little scary to get into it. If it's not your thing, because you sit back and you think, much like those sports guys we spoke about earlier on, people are going to go, oh, this guy's not the bloody one for that. Why aren't you bulldogging him on this question? Why aren't you doing these and that as well? And
but then again, it comes back to, I guess you're conducting in a way.
Yeah, there you are. That's it. But no, it was daunting to get into, because... more so than it being Māori politics, that it was politics. Because I know that political crowds and political people are very... It's weird, don't you find
it's where all the strings of comments are on blogs and stuff.
They are. And the weird bit is, don't you find a lot of political reporting, I find really weird, they're like going, oh, he said, contradiction, contradiction. You said that. And it's like, really? Is that what we're getting at here?
It's an odd world, that's right. And so, how was feedback? I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I think it's one of those weird ones where, see, Bailey, who came up with it, who's a
film reviews were odd,
absolute business genius, and what he did, what was real smart was he was like, look, we need to set this up so that it lives longer online than it did on TV.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is, the vignettes we did were quite easy to get out there as well. And there's one that I know, it's really weird. One started appearing on my Facebook feed about 5 months ago.
With people tagging you in it.
Yeah, and it was the one of Nigel Latter. We had Nigel Latter talking about how not everyone starts from the same thing, and that there are people that have advantages they just don't realise it.
Yeah.
You know, and so here's the thing: if it comes from someone like me or someone that looks like me, you're just whining. If it comes from Nigel Latter, well, then again, it's that thing where I guess, like you say, he doesn't seem to have a vested interest in talking Māori up. So actually, so people actually bought into that as well. So you appreciate that from Nigel to coming in and doing that, because it's the whole, mate, I can't say this to normal, I don't know, let's just not normal, because they're not normal. Talking to racist guy in Invercargill. Sorry, Invercargill, that's just the first city that came to mind. Auckland.
This is going to be like
racist guy in Auckland.
This is going to be like when Newsboy was kicked out of Gore.
Yeah, you know, it's okay, racist guy in Auckland. He's going to listen more to it coming out of Nigel Latter than me. He's probably going to feel betrayed by Nigel Latter and think Nigel Latter shit from now on.
He probably thinks Nigel's a bit of a bloody wispy,
look at him.
bloody Aucklander, to be honest.
He's probably, you know, but I mean, there's more of it that comes from that. So it's hard, you know, because a lot of the time when you're talking about stuff, you also realise there's extra hurdles to get over with these things. So that's why it felt so much heavier.
Yeah.
Because you needed to get it right, and I was staying up till, I don't know, 2 a.m, rewriting the monologues to get them right, to make sure it was in there. We did ones on the TPP, and I went real deep into research onto that to have a bit of a go, just to find out these things, because one thing I realised was most of the stuff we were scared of that friends of mine were sharing, you look and you go, yeah, but that's America. None of this actually affects this as well. But for experts, go have a look at the New Zealand-Singapore free trade deal that started, because that's basically all this is, and it goes in each one. But again, it was finding out these things. I ended up talking with the Trade Ministry in Australia. Do you know what they call it?
What?
The New Zealand's deal.
Why?
Because they go, well, you guys are the ones running it.
Right.
Which really changed. Remember, we used to laugh at John Key going to Hawaii and going, oh, look at him falling over himself to play golf with Obama. You might find it was the other way, because New Zealand's led that way right back from the start, from when they went to Singapore, and then they brought in Brunei, and then they went across to Chile and brought these other ones in. So they've tried to find these along the way. So, but, you know, we went in really deep on these things, because it's the bit where I thought, I don't want to make a dick of myself if I'm trying to present this. I need to get right inside it.
Yeah. And you don't want to be blindsided by someone saying something or whatever that you kind of, I didn't know about that.
Yeah. So in a similar way as you were talking about right back at the start about, do you have to know about everything about all the sports? No, because I can be interested. Yet in this case, I did feel a lot like, right, I'm going to learn as much as I can, and when someone says something I don't know, it's okay not to know. Go, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah.
Because that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting.
It's interesting to me. Yeah. So hopefully by being interested, that will bring out a better interview.
And so I'm trying to remember, Mike was on with you. Mike King was on with you every episode.
Yes.
And did you work with him before? How was he to work for? You had a good rapport, you two on here.
I've known Mike since I saw him doing amateur stand-up at Kitty O'Brien's pub in Auckland in the early. I wasn't even doing TV then, so about 93, 94. And he was a chef that had just come off the Inter-Island ferry.
Wow.
And I saw his amateur night, and he was unreal.
Right, I was going to say one of those people you go, he's.
Do you know who else was on that night?
Who?
Brendan Lovegrove.
Right.
Radar.
Right.
There was a few of them there that actually went on to do very, very, very well in comedy.
You ever been asked to do like 7 days or stuff like that? You've got it in you. You do really well.
I don't know why. Like, part of me was I was part of the big MediaWorks stable. And then I went across to work on a station which was half owned by the TAB and MediaWorks. Yeah. So in a weird way, what happened to me was I went
Radio Sport, half owned by the TAB.
It was called Live Sport.
Live Sport, sorry.
So I went from sort of being. It's a bit like. From being near the sun to all of a sudden you're Pluto, and you're part of it, but you're orbiting way the shit out there, and everyone forgets you're there. So somewhere along the way, and it would just be a weird thing. I remember once someone I worked in radio rings me up. Oh, I'm going to go on 7 days. Yeah, can you write some jokes for me? You know, that's thing. And there's a part of you inside that goes,
I'd like to do 7 days. Yeah.
Come on, my friend John Bridges, put me on.
Yeah. But that's right. I forgot about that connection too.
But then again, if you're not who they want, then you're just not who they want. And again, that takes a little while to get to. Like for example, I learnt to go for auditions, and you know, I've probably been turned down for 85 different things. probably nearly 100, but there's that bit where you learn to go, rather than walking out of audition and going, oh, God, I hope I get it, God, I hope I get it, God, I hope I get it, and then you get the phone call and you haven't got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually learnt somewhere along the way to go, do you know what? I'm probably not even getting this. So I'm going to go in and try and give my best audition. And you feel like, do you know what? I gave myself a decent chance at that.
You know what else is just, I guess it's casting in a way. It's like they're not saying, no, Nathan, you're no good.
No.
I think they're saying...
You just don't fit what we needed.
Right, so that's it. So even before you walk in, I know you know all this, but it's interesting to point out. It's like, so someone that day is... That's it. That's what we've been looking for. But it's not the other 14 were like, oh, how did that guy even get on the radio?
If you're going to do anything like that, be a musician or you're going to be an artist of any sort, do a job that isn't an office job, you need to have that ability to learn water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure if I have
it's a very hard thing to get to.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to get to. But RE 7 Days, so they did 7 days of sport last year. Johnny Bridges got me in to be his associate producer with him, which meant helping wrangle some of the talent to get them in, assessing which sports people might be good at a 7 days thing, helping in the joke writing sessions and stuff, and just being around absolutely geniuses like Corey Enriquez and bloody Nick Raddo and other just fantastic, right? Dean Butler, just so funny. And you sit in this room and you break off into two teams. There's like stories, and there'll be like a story there, and then you just bang out jokes for 3 or 4 hours,
right?
Yeah.
I had
guys.
I have a colleague and friend and just extraordinary talent. Have you met Thomas? I had him in for my first podcast.
Oh,
Thomas
wow.
Watts?
No, I haven't.
Okay. He started producing.
Mind you, I'm bad with names.
That's
I'm really
right.
bad with names.
No, that's fine.
I probably
fine.
have. Sorry,
so when was the last time? Good, we're nearly. I don't want to hold you for the rest of the day. You look after your kids very shortly, don't you?
later on in the Arvo, they're at school.
Okay.
We got Darcy's.
We won't do a Rogan and go for
We got Darcy's report yesterday. Actually,
you can read that out because I started recording you surreptitiously 10 minutes early, but I won't use some of that content.
Sure.
I won't use any of that content probably. So I reckon we've done an hour and 17 minutes, so probably only another 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Sure.
But because you touched on it, because you must often get carbon dated back to the 90s, because ICE TV was a different style of television at the time.
Yeah.
I'd wager.
really
probably
different.
led to similar different style television for quite a few years afterwards. But when was the last time you, John, and Petra were in a room together, or is it just has there ever been a reunion?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned John.
At John's birthday a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Actually.
Wow.
And there as well. So no, there was something.
Did you get a photo of the three of you together for
Do you know what we did
sake?
actually? We bloody should have.
Yeah.
Well, I love them. I just do. And I've been very fortunate where it's like that. Same with Oscar as well.
Yeah.
To me, they feel like brothers and sisters.
Because for the three of you, it must have been like, wow, this is quite an opportunity, right? Because, I don't know, mate, TV was quite stuffy in the decades before that. I'm not saying you guys were the only pioneers around that time, but it was a signalling of a change. And it must have felt like, how the hell did we end up here?
Like, it felt wanky at the time, but now in hindsight, it's fair enough to say it. I mean, for example, we were going into shops with our cameras trying to, Vox Pox people. And before that, the only ones that had gone in and done that was Fair Go. So you'd try with the cameras.
No reality TV.
And they're like, what are you doing? What are you coming in here for?
No Amcam. Yeah.
I want to make a joke about shoes. Why?
I didn't sell you that phone. We're closed.
So we learnt that what happened is that if there was a female shopkeeper, in goes John, who at that time was Cleo Bachelor of the Year material. So he'd go in there with his sparkling blue eyes and his charm, and they'd be like, okay. And then there would be, the guys send in Petra, gorgeous,
send in Nathan,
statuesque.
come on.
Is the guy in there wearing a flecky vest? Hey, bro, can we... Yeah, right outside, get there, But it was, it was interesting too, because I'd come from Music TV in Auckland, Petra had come from Music TV in Christchurch, and we'd lived very different lives to get to where we were. And then...
Which I think really added to the success of it.
It did.
It was a bit of everyone.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe why the levels of feeling is so deep amongst the three of us, because we had to come from fairly different points together to meet in the middle. And I don't know if it would have worked, would have worked without John. John was...
Well, they'd probably all say that about each of you.
Yeah, John was a little bit older. He had, so he had experience on his side, and he's just a wonderful human who's probably the cleverest person I've ever worked with. I mean,
Really?
who gets 96 on their thesis on their masters? John Bridges does.
Wow.
You know, and I've never seen someone just when you're explaining concepts to him, John's like, "Yep," and he's got it straight away.
So he got a master's meanwhile all through that
Yeah.
broadcasting stuff he's been doing.
Yeah.
And so, just in closing, was anyone, because thinking about, we've talked about attitudes and approaches towards stuff. So you get green lit for TV3,
Yeah.
and then once you're in there, was anyone involved in putting it together? Like, what the fuck is this? When you came to them with
probably most of them. Well, because we were filming on Handycam.
Yeah, that's 'cause you
and
talk
then
about
we came
that.
in, and then
Yeah.
we give these tapes to this area called Cine Tape, where they do right, where they load it in to make it there to get it into the edit suites, and it comes back, and one of them walks in holding it. This is a videotape.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah. Well,
this is a videotape.
This isn't broadcast quality.
Yeah.
We're like, and then Jude Anaru, Jude Anaru was really the visionary. She's the one that put it together.
She used to run BFM.
Yeah, she did. And she was the alchemist that made it work. She moved the backroom staff on and off. The directors and that to make it work to give us that show. Because when it started, we were filling 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, you were.
It's
Yeah, that's a long
ridiculous.
time.
3 hours.
You would not get that these days. I've never thought about that.
Hell no, you wouldn't. No.
Yeah.
Yet she managed
That's a
to
lot
make
of
it
fridge
work.
advertising, man.
Yeah. So she could make it go. So she's the one's like, no, that's what they're filming on, and that's what they're doing. And then because of that, it was just quite free, and because you're having to fill so much time, you can just be really creative without realising that you are being really creative. And also as well, because you're on Saturday afternoon, the network don't care, and you knew that we were okay when all of a sudden you started seeing the programmers coming down and they're like, hey, my guys, hey, Jason,
Yeah.
Nathan, hey, hey, and here's my friend John, there he is,
John, hey, Johnny boy.
can I just say, I'll just tell you one thing. They came down with this video cassette, and they put it in and they go, can you guys watch this? Because apparently it's funny. And it was South Park, and it was the opening episode of South Park. Remember the original one that was made? And we just laughed our
And
asses
these
off.
guys like 20 or 30 years older than you going,
and they're
"What?"
standing there going like, is this funny? Well, yeah, they just killed that one. We're going, oh my God, they killed the orange one.
You know what's the orange one? You know what's so funny about that? Interesting about that is you guys might have been the birth of South Park in New Zealand, because now you make me think about it. They launched Channel 4 afterwards.
Yeah, they did.
And it was their flagship.
That was the flagship show. It was us in South Park. Yeah.
And same thing like when I first saw The Simpsons years ago. That's right. We weren't in the programming decision room with you, but at our flat in Cuba Street, South Park kind of go, what? This is just...
Oh, this is crazy. Look at the fat kid. He's horrible.
There was no Family Guy, all of that stuff, kind of cast. I think now I think about it, the only really radical cartoon before that I remember was Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah. Well, Ren and Stimpy, that's right. Yeah, Ren and Stimpy was big around. That was about 4 years before that, wasn't it? Do you know, I was one of those people. I had the Ren and Stimpy T-shirt, but I didn't really get it. I liked the log jingle, but I didn't really get where everything else was funny.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I watch now, like I watch cartoons with my kids, and the Cartoon Network just churns out some awesome ones.
Really?
They are so good.
Right.
But you can see where the roots have come from in the Ren and Stimpys and the South Parks that have moved through, and
but without being too filthy and adult. But
but so funny. Like, because I think they realise a lot of parents will watch TV with the kids just to make sure what it is now. So you get this one that my kids watch called Teen Titans Go, and if they're watching it, I'm like, cool, I'll watch this with you. It's great.
Do you think that those kids? I mean, different generations work out different things, or whatever. But do you think they're going to be? What's it?
They're going to have amazingly twisted senses of humor.
That's what I was going to say. They're going to be a lot that radicalism felt like it to me. It happened later on in my life, but they're going to be pretty savvy. Like, where I notice it is sometimes I go, because I came from school in the 80s and the 90s, and sometimes I get this clip off the internet or whatever for a shoot, and I go, oh, shall I play this? Shall I not? Shall I play this? It's a bit bloody weird. And then you play it, and then you realise whatever they're watching and listening to, it's just like, doesn't matter if it's got a couple of this or that in it,
Yeah.
Hey, we better finish there. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I didn't expect to
on.
I didn't expect. Well, as I say, it's a mark of a man who's ended up in the correct industry, that you come and do this eloquently and entertainingly for another hour and a half after doing it for 3 hours this morning. I felt like I had something else to say about that. Oh yeah, I didn't expect a 40-year revisionist piece on movement of Polynesian people throughout the world, but that was fascinating.
It was like I say, it was one of the coolest things I've ever got to do, and I feel massively fortunate because I got to do some bloody cool things.